Okay, so like I mentioned on Tuesday, today's going to be a bit kind of like a work period. So kind of the general plan for today is I'm going to give just a bit of a recap, a little speed round of what we kind of covered last week and this week, and kind of what that pertains to for assignment one. Uh, I'll give you some time to go through practice 2A. Let me pull up the task list for the week as well, just so you can follow along. So I go here to my task list. So the week two task list, we covered chapter two. So we kind of went through the lesson there. Uh, all that's left for our tasks here is practice 2A. The review questions, I'm not going to go through in class. If you want to use that as kind of an extra resource to make sure you're up to speed, by all means, go ahead and do it. But our other task for this week is also assignment one. So the last two things that we need to really cover today are just some time to work on assignment one and to go through practice 2A. So starting with our quick little recap here. Uh, so in chapter one last week, we talked about the user interface, kind of named some of the buttons and locations, gave them names. So when they come up in conversation, you kind of know what we're referring to, where to find those specific tools or buttons. We talked about some basic kind of controls of AutoCAD to open, save, close, uh, start new drawing files. We also talked a bit about navigation tools, so zooming and panning. And that kind of summarizes chapter one. And then in chapter two, just as a bit of a recap as well, we talked about the line command. So the line tool, how I can use that to specify coordinates, or I can specify lines with a length and an angle. We talked about polylines and kind of the difference between the two, lines versus polylines. Uh, where a polyline is a series of line segments, but it only counts as one object. And then the line tool will make a series of line segments, but each line segment is its own object. We then moved on to rectangles and circles. So we kind of talked about how circles have different methods to create, or we have different methods to create circles based on parameters that were given or that those parameters that were known. We don't want to make assumptions about objects in our drawing. So these different circle tools are for kind of different scenarios based on the information you have available to you. So if I'm given center points and radii and diameters, I'll probably resort to the first two options here. If I'm trying to fill a circle between a gap, say if I have two lines, and I don't necessarily know what the center point between these two lines is, I also don't really know what the distance, the halfway distance, say, for the radius or the full distance for the diameter. If those aren't immediately known to me, I might use something like 2-point, which can easily fill in that gap, and AutoCAD will do that math for me. Or if I have something like 2 circles, and I'm trying to fit a circle that will touch both of these 2 circles here, and I want that circle to be a certain diameter or a certain radius, I might use something like tangent, tangent, radius to make that circle tangential to this bottom right circle, tangential to the circle on the left, and then give it some sort of radius, like say 4, and have it fill in like that. So if you kind of relate this to some sort of real world case, if you're kind of designing gears that are going to be interlocking, you don't really know what the size of this third gear is supposed to be. They'll fit between these two. That's kind of a handy tool that autofills what that gear should be that would fit in that gap. So it's all based on what parameters we're given or what parameters we know we want to use. That's why we have different circles or different methods of drawing circles. We also talked about the erase tool. So when we make mistakes or we need to make amendments to a drawing, say my boss comes by and he tells me that I actually don't want this drawing to look like this. We want to remove these sections and add these sections on. How am I going to remove that section? I can use the erase tool. So if I draw just a bunch of various stuff, then my erase tool, remember that the erase tool will erase objects. So it's on an object basis. So I'll remove this entire circle because the entire circle counts as one object. I drew these first zigzags here with the line tool. So each segment is an object. And then I drew this bottom zigzag here with the polyline tool. So it all counts as one object. And then just hitting enter will delete them. Or I can use the other method of just selecting the object so it highlights in blue and hitting my delete key. And say I deleted something by accident and I actually want that circle back. Then we talked about the redo button as well, or the undo rather. So undo will undo the last command that I've put in, or redo will redo my most recent command as well, or my most recent undo. So if I undo too far back, I can hit redo to bring stuff back. So again, there's a lot of different methods of using these tools. If you prefer doing the selection and then hitting delete on your keyboard, by all means use that. If you prefer using the erase tool, because it gives you kind of a heads up of what exactly you're deleting, then by all means use that as well. We'll talk about it a bit further when we talk about the assignment. There's different methods you can use. You can use whatever method you want, as long as your product is to spec. So your drawing is to spec. I can't really dock you for anything. Okay. We also talked about ortho mode and polar tracking. So these are kind of our intro to precision drawing tools. And remember, ortho mode and polar tracking are on our status bar, where ortho mode is going to restrict my line drawing to only 90-degree angles, horizontals and verticals. And polar mode, or polar tracking, is going to give me these nice green tracking lines that help me snap to those tracking lines for specific angles. So I have a tracking line, for example, I have it set up for every 45 degrees currently. So I got a tracking line every 45 degrees. So 0, 45, 90, etc. And since my cursor snaps to those tracking angles, it will be exactly 90 degrees and exactly 45 degrees, so on and so forth. So those are to help us out with our precision and angles. We don't want accidental hanging decimals when we make those angles. They might be slightly off what the angle is supposed to be. And it helps speed us up a little. Because if I were to not use tracking or polar tracking, I'd have to draw this line, type in whatever length, I'll put in 10, and then press tab, 45, enter, 5, tab, 90, enter, etc., etc. It gets a little slow at times. So with the tracking, I can quickly snap to that 45, type in my 10, hit enter, snap to the 90, hit 5, hit enter. So it saves me a few keystrokes. Okay. So that pretty much sums up chapter 1 and 2. Just a little lightning round recap of what we covered. So again, today's going to be a bit of a work period. So I'm going to give you guys, say, maybe 25 or 30 minutes to go through practice 2A in the textbook. If you still don't have a copy of the textbook yet, just be aware there is a PDF version on Brightspace. So I have chapter 2, textbook chapter 2 and 3 here from the week 2 Brightspace folder. So if you come to this PDF on Brightspace and you go to page 13, you should be able to find practice 2A. Okay. And it's subdivided into like 5 little mini tasks. So just go through them. I'll give you about a half hour or so, and then we'll come to get back together as a group and kind of go through them. Okay. Any questions before I cut you loose for a bit? Okay, I'll let you have at it then. If you have any questions while you're going through it, just feel free to unmute and ask your questions as well.
Oh, excuse me, Brent.
Yep.
I was wondering, my AutoCAD seems to be acting abnormal.
Yep.
So whenever I close and open AutoCAD, my grid squares are extremely large. Is there a way I can change that setting?
Yep. So first of all, we're going to find out why your grid squares are very large. So I'm going to share my screen real quick on AutoCAD here. So what you're saying is when you open AutoCAD, these grid squares end up being very large.
Yes. I've reset them or I've set them to normal whenever I can or whenever
Yep.
I'm in use of it, but it's a bit uh, tedious to keep doing that. I was wondering
Yep.
if I can change its overall settings.
So is your scale still correct though for the overall AutoCAD scale? So if you type in like 1, 1 for a line and just make it a length of 1, does it still look normal? It's not
One
like really
second.
large or anything.
Uh, and one. It's very small. It's like uh 1/10 of the box.
Okay. You can see the line very clearly though, right?
No, it's like
No.
it's like a small tick.
Okay.
1/10 of the length of the box.
Yeah. So uh it might actually be a grid issue. If the line, because we made a line that's just 1 unit length,
Yeah.
uh I'm just checking that you don't have your zoom. You're not like zoomed too far out or too far in. Because if you zoom too far in, these boxes will look large, of course. And if you zoom too far out, it might give you bigger boxes than you expect. Because there's no direct display on AutoCAD of what your scale currently is. So just make sure you've been zoomed in enough that you can see that 1 unit line or 1 unit long line.
Yeah, I'm zoomed in. It is
Is it still
my
about a
current
tenth?
scale is set to 1/10 of a grid square.
Okay. So to
Yeah.
change the grid then, I'm just gauging for where the issue might be. If it's not a zoom problem then we can go into the grid settings and change the grid itself.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is on the status bar at the bottom here, There's a
Yeah.
grid button for grid
Yeah,
mode.
the display grid, drawing grid.
Yep. If you right click on it and click grid settings, you'll get this little pop-up menu called drafting settings.
Yeah.
So on here on the right side, we have a section called grid spacing.
Yeah.
So just make sure on here, well, you can change it whatever you like, really. This will change those boxes, the scale of those boxes themselves. So if it's looks like about a 1/10 across the box, it's probably something at like 10 currently for your
Yes,
spacing.
it is 10.
Yeah. So you can change it
Yeah,
down to something like 1 or 0.5 or something like that.
yeah, I had the same issue last class, but what I'm looking for is to make this change permanent.
Permanent.
Because,
Let
yes,
me think about a solution. Um,
you showed me the same method last class, and I've been
okay. I
changing it
wasn't
manually.
100% sure it was you, so I just had to double check. But
Yeah,
um, normally grid spacing is determined by the template file. So I don't know if I want to edit templates right away, unless there's a better method. Let me check.
okay.
Yeah, I think, let me fish around here.
All right, I'll just do a 2A.
Sure. Try this real quick for me here. Let me share my screen again. Go into your application menu.
All right,
And then go down to options and hit options.
got it.
Okay. And then look down this menu. There should be a section called template settings,
Got it. Template settings.
and then expand it with the little plus sign to the left.
Okay.
And then where it says default template file name for Q new,
Yeah.
click on that to expand it. Does it say none underneath it? Or is there a
Yes.
file?
It says none.
Okay. So double click on that. And then it should auto direct you to your template folder.
Okay.
Do you have the same folder that I
Yes.
have on my screen? Yeah. So
Yeah.
then double click on ACAD, this template file here.
Mine has a .dwt at the end.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
All right.
Yep. So you should double click that, and then it should fill where it said none. There should be a file location now.
Yeah.
Ending in acad.dwt.
Yes.
Okay, and then hit apply,
Apply.
and then hit OK.
All right.
And then give that a shot.
All right. Let me just close AutoCAD.
Sure. I've just changed or specified on AutoCAD what the template file is being used for new drawings. And that template file should carry the settings for grid size. So I'm hoping that will hard carry over your grid sizing.
All right,
If
new
not,
template.
we'll see.
All right, grid settings. Oh, it's set to 0.5 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. It's better than 10.
Yeah.
All right.
If you want to set it to something else and set it permanently, I'm wondering if this is too out there.
Okay.
Yeah, let me. Yeah, so if you want to set it to something else, that'll be open to every single time. So I've changed it now to 0.5 because that ACAD file is set to 0.5. If you want it something else, what you can do is manually change your grid settings again to whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
So you can set your spacing if you like 1, you can set it to 1. And hit OK. And then what I'll do is save this file, this drawing file. I want to save it as a template rather than a drawing file.
Oh, okay.
So if you save it as a template and have that template file with that grid setting, then you go back into your options again under template settings, default template file name for Q new, and you can change this template file from the ACAD we just put in to your new template that we just made.
Okay.
So I've set it to 1. I'll hit OK, save as template file. I'll just put it on my desktop so I know where it is. And now, go to my options. Yep, looks like it works.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just have to change the grid settings, save it as a template file, and then reroute in the options there for where the default template that you're using is to that template file you just made. Does that make sense? Do I need to go through the steps again?
No, it's okay.
Or are you good? I mean,
Yeah.
we're kind of in free period now anyway, so if you need me to go through it again, there's no problem.
It's okay. I'll just
Good?
rewatch the recording if I need to do it again.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of steps just to make that setting permanent, but yeah, it's just since AutoCAD works on all the default settings are based on the template file, you have to make your own template file, which is kind of advanced for where we're at right now, and then use that to pull those settings each time.
Yeah. Okay.
How's everyone doing with the practice 2A there? About 15 minutes in, so I'm just double checking. Good.
Good. I do have a question in regards to snaps.
Yep,
I do have mine enabled. The only thing that bothers me with them, and there's got to be a workaround for it, I don't know if it's just a setting.
yep,
When you go to draw a line, sometimes it forces your snap too aggressively to either an intersection or to a midpoint or something like that. And you just want something that's in the middle
yeah.
of a random point of a line. How would I adjust that for it to give me a little bit more freedom?
Uh, the easiest, kind of quickest way is just to limit how many object snaps you're using at a time.
Okay.
So if you're kind of looking specifically to use a midpoint snap, just make sure you've kind of isolated to only have midpoint snap active. So if you kind of remove most of them and leave only midpoint, then it shouldn't have other weird snaps going on interfering with you.
Okay. And oh yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, I'll fiddle with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep, no problem.
Hi, Brent.
Hey,
So I had a question. The practice 2A, there are like 4 drawings. How many of them are we doing? Like, the second and the third look like the same. The
let me
one with
just
this,
scroll.
yeah. I'm using the text one, the lesson 2 copy, like from D to L.
Yeah.
Page 9.
Page 9.
Yeah, in the lesson 2 copy. ENG
Yeah.
D238 lesson 2 copy. Yeah. Week 2.
So it's all 4. The actual instructions are in the textbook itself. There's a PDF of the textbook on Brightspace as well. So let me share my screen
Okay.
here. So you're looking at the PowerPoint here,
Yeah,
page 9.
I was using that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the textbook, in the week 2 folder as well, we
Okay.
have textbook chapter 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So in here, and I just have it open in another tab here as well.
Okay.
Here is practice 2A is on page 13 of this PDF.
Okay.
And it'll take you through the instructions. So we're doing all 4 drawings, and then it's going to tell you what tools to specifically use.
Okay. Yeah, I got it
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. How's practice 2A coming along there? You guys about halfway through, done the first 2 tasks? Where are you guys at there? Anyone finished? Finished?
Yeah, all done.
All done? Okay, we'll go through it together here. I'll share my screen and just kind of quickly go through some of the steps. I know these are kind of straightforward, but it's good to just kind of check that you've done it correctly. So I'll share my screen here. Starting practice 2A from task 1. I'm going to be reading the instructions off of a second monitor, so I'm not flipping back and forth. So you can follow along with your copy. So, starting with task 1, drawing lines with dynamic input. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to follow the drawing specs as described. I don't want to deviate from the dimensions they've told me to use, and I want to follow the instructions to a T. They want it a specific way, so I'll do it their specific way. Okay? So starting out with task 1, it's asking me to open object.dwg from your practice files folder. It is a blank drawing. So I'm going to go to right space here on my chapter practice files folder, one with a huge number of files in here. Scrolling down a ways, near the bottom here, we have object. This would be my object.dwg because it's a drawing file, .dwg extension. So I'll download object. And I can go back to AutoCAD and go ahead and open it. So I'll use open just off the start menu. You can use the application menu if you want. You can use the quick access bar, whatever floats your boat. So opening it to my file explorer, I'm going to go to my downloads. So that's where it'll be. And open the object file. And like they mentioned, this is a blank document. Something about these files as well. Just remember that when you open a new drawing, that's not necessarily going to have the same settings as when you open some sort of pre-existing drawing or based on a different template. So even though this is a blank drawing, there are some settings embedded in here that I might not immediately be aware of. So for example, for this one with the object.dwg, it has layouts of A-sized, B-sized, and C-sized. If I open a new drawing, I can see that my layouts are not the same in the bottom left here. So there are some kind of hidden settings in there that might not be immediately obvious. There might be some text settings in there. Maybe some of their grid settings are different, et cetera, et cetera. So we do want to make sure, even though that's a blank drawing and it seems like a redundant step, I still want to make sure I'm following that step. Just because they might be settings that I'm just not aware of that they want to keep on that drawing. So with object.dwg, it says if the grid lines are showing, just hide them. Mine aren't showing. If your grid lines are showing and you need to hide them again, it's just on the status bar here, the grid mode button that will display or hide your grid. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So it'll display and hide the grid. And it wants me to be with the grid hidden. So I'm going to leave it hidden. In the status bar, verify that dynamic input is toggled on. Mine is toggled on already, again on the status bar. And then in the Home tab, Draw panel, they want me to start with the line tool. So start with the line tool, and we're going to start drawing our object here. So in the dynamic input, it wants me to specify my first point at 5, 5, so 5 on the x-axis, 5 on the y-axis. It does not want me to start at the origin. So it wants me to specifically start at 5, 5, so I will. I'll type in 5, 5 to specify that first point, hitting enter, places it up here. Next, it says move the crosshairs up and to the right of the first point. I'm up and to the right. I'm just going to turn off my snap tracking for now. And it says to enter 10 for the distance, 10 for the line length, and 45 degrees for the angle. So I'll press tab to switch to angle, enter 45, and hit enter. The line's drawn, and I still have the line, or the new line that I'm about to place, connected to my cursor because I haven't left the line command yet. I still have the line command active. Next, it wants me to move the crosshairs above that point I just placed, entering 4 for the distance, tab, 90 degrees for that angle. Even though my prompt there said 90 degrees, it might include some decimals in there. So it might be like 90.02 degrees or something like that. So I might want to just add in and type in that 90 degrees just to make sure it is exactly 90 degrees. So that prompt might be lying to me a little bit, unless I manually input 90 degrees. So I don't want to eyeball it either. Next, move the crosshairs to the right and draw the next segment 6 units to the right. So 6 for my length. And since it's straight to the right, I'll use 0 degrees. And that gives me a horizontal line. Finally, move the crosshairs down and use a next line segment of 4 units. So 4, and again, 90 degrees. And then my next line segment, again, to the bottom right here, 10 units long and 45 degrees. So I've got most of my shape here. And then it says for the last line segment across the bottom of the shape, press the down arrow to display the command options and select close to close the figure. So it's up to you if you want to use the down arrow and select close from the menu. You can also just type, oh, let me undo that. You can just type C and hit enter. That will also close, whichever method you feel is best. And they've explicitly not given me that length of that line at the bottom, so I don't want to guess. I'll just follow their instructions and use close to close that shape. Okay. So that's it for task 1. Moving on to task 2. Any questions about task 1? If I'm going too fast or anything like that?
No, you're good.
Good. Okay. Okay, so that's task 1. Task 2, it wants me to erase some of the lines I drew. So in my Home tab, under the Modify panel, we're going to use the Erase tool and hover over any line segment. That should show it grayed out, and then that little red X shows up beside my cursor, showing that that's a line to be erased. Click on it to confirm the selection. And it wants me to erase according to the figure in the textbook, which is these 3 bottom lines here. So the 2 45-degree angles and this bottom horizontal line. So I'll select those 3 and then hit enter to delete. You can also just manually select them by highlighting them blue. It wants me to remove the remaining lines that way. So I'll select the remaining lines to highlight them blue, and then press delete on my keyboard to remove those lines. So that's task 2 for erasing objects. Moving on to task 3 here, use polar tracking. It wants me to use the line command again, but this time with polar tracking on. So I'm going to switch it on real quick here. And it wants me to draw the figure 2-24. So in my status bar, it wants me to make sure that I have my polar tracking set to every 90 degrees. So I'll switch it to every 90 degrees. So 90, 180, 270, 360. And then start the line command. So in this case, it wants my start point to be at the origin. The coordinates 0, 0. So I'll start there, 0, 0. Next, it wants me to start drawing to the right of the object and then kind of make my way around counterclockwise. And with the tracking line, I don't have to put in the angle. The tracking line is going to confirm that that's exactly 0 degrees. So I only have to type in the length here. Let me just double check the steps here, that I'm not missing anything. Doesn't look like it, so I can get started here. 30 for this first line length, 30 units. The next line length vertically will be 20, and then I just hit enter. Again, I don't have to put in that angle at all, just because the polar tracking line is already snapping me to that specific angle. And then continue around to draw the shape in the figure by moving the crosshairs in multiples of 90 degree angles. All these angles are rectangular or at perpendicular angles, so I don't have to do anything but 90-degree angles here. I don't need to switch my polar tracking. So I'm just going to go around and finish the drawing here. So the next length is 10 to the left, moving my cursor down, 5 down, to the left again, 10, back up 5, left 10, and then finally, let me just double check. It wants me to use close to close the shape. Now, in this case, it's pretty obvious this length is 20, so you could put in 20, you'll end up with the same thing. But just for posterity here, I'll put in C to close my shape, and then hit enter to close that shape. And this should be my final product here. Moving on to task 4, draw some rectangles. So I'm going to be drawing rectangles and locating them precisely using coordinates. So it wants me to use the rectangle tool in the draw panel. I'll select the rectangle tool. First corner of this rectangle should be at the coordinates 2, 2. So 2, 2. Hit enter to set that first corner. And then the opposite corner is at 6, 11. And that should give me my rectangle. And remember, when I put in coordinates rather than a length and width, it's relative to that first coordinate I put. So this isn't necessarily kind of at that exact coordinate. Then it wants me to draw the second rectangle at the point 18, 4. So I'll select rectangle again, 18, 4. And then the dimensions used in the figure, which are 8 by 5. So 8 for the width, tab, 5 for the height, hit enter, and I should get that second rectangle there. I think there's something wrong with this rectangle here. Doesn't look right. Oh, I think I know. I have settings set from earlier. Let me redo this one. It looks wrong. Start at 2, 2 again, and then I'll use a width of 6, height of 11. That looks better. I have some commands from the other, some settings from the other class, another class I'm teaching where they're using absolute, but we're not going to be using absolute coordinates. So, okay. So that gives me my 2 rectangles here. That one looked a little off, so I redid it. So now we have our initial object and a couple rectangles cut into it here. Finally, with task 5, we're going to draw some circles. It wants me to use center diameter, tan radius, and tan. So in the Home tab, Draw panel again, we have our circle tool. It wants me to do or start with the center diameter. So I'll check the center diameter circle. In this case, I'm given a circle with a specific center point and a specific diameter. So I will input or use the center diameter tool. It just makes sense because those are the parameters that I've been given. So my first point for, or my center point for my circle will be at 25, 16. And hitting enter will place it right on that coordinate. And it wants my diameter to be 4. You might notice on the drawing there in the textbook, it has that little phi symbol, the circle with the slash through it. Whenever you see that on a blueprint or any kind of drawing, that always means diameter. Okay, so whenever you see that little phi symbol, the circle with the slash through it, that's always denoting a diameter. So the diameter for the circle is 4.00. I can just put in 4 and hit enter. And now I have a circle with diameter 4. Okay. After that guy, it wants me to do the next one with tan radius. So in this case, I'm given a circle. That circle is touching 2 lines. So there should be a tangent between those lines and circles, the tangent line. And I'm given a radius. So it doesn't have 3 contact points. So I can't use tan. I don't know where specifically it's touching those lines, so I can't really use 2 point. I don't know where the center point is. I don't have dimensions for that. So the most logical one to use is tan radius, just like they kind of ask you to. So with tan radius, I can then use the 2 tangent lines it's specifying, the top line of this rectangle and the left line or the left side. I can just select both of these 2 sides first. Remember, it's tan radius, so it's select a tangent, select another tangent, then finally describe the radius. So I can click on this line, you define that first tangent, click on the left line here to define the second tangent, and then it asks me to input my radius. I'll put in 2 and hit enter. And there I get my circle. Same thing with the previous circle. Every time on a drawing you see R and then a number, and it has a leader pointing to a circle, R is always going to denote a radius. So it's something to kind of keep in mind there as well. The phi is always diameters, R's are always radii. Okay, so there's my second circle there. And then finally, the last circle, we'll use tangent. Reason being, the kind of logical reason of why to use this tool is that I don't have a center point. I don't know where that center point is specifically supposed to be. I don't have any specific connecting points on either side of the rectangle that it wants me to use. I don't have dimensions to use those other tools. So I will use tangent because I do know that circle is supposed to be touching those lines. So it wants to touch the top line, the left side, and the right side. So I'll just select all 3. It doesn't matter what order you choose them in. So top, I'll pick right second, left, and it's defined those 3 lines as tangents to the circle. So that circle fits neatly between those 3 lines. Okay. And that's it. This is our finished drawing here. Any questions about 2A? Any of the steps confusing or anything like that? All good? Okay, So we're about halfway through the class now. I'll give you guys a quick 10-minute break here. So we'll reconvene at 7:10, and then we'll continue on. I'll kind of reiterate some of the assignment 1 details. I'll show you a couple of examples of what we're looking for, and then it's just another kind of free working period to work on assignment 1. All right. It's 7:10 now, so let's continue on. Like I said before the break, we're just going to kind of go over the assignment instructions again. I'll show you a couple samples of what to look for. I know there's a bit of confusion about dimensions and stuff. So let me share my screen here. So for assignment 1, just going through the instructions again. Again, assignment 1 is under the week 2 folder. And the general procedure here is you're going to complete the chapter 3 projects in the textbook. So both 3.1 and 3.2. So for 3.1, you're going to use the simple1.dwg file. Again, that's in our content under our textbook chapter practice files. So simple 1 is here. Simple 2 is also here, both drawing files. You'll be saving these files. You'll be renaming them when you save them to the correct file format. Your name, first name, last name, assignment 1-3.1.dwg, and then the same thing with simple 2 for the project 3.2. You'll be using simple2.dwg, and then when you go to save it and submit it, make sure your file name is renamed to your name, first name, last name, 1-3.2. So you're going to be handing in 2 drawing files, 2 separate drawing files, one for each of the 2 projects in chapter 3. Again, here under deliverables, it re-mentions that 2 drawing files to be put in the assignment 1 submit folder. So when you're finished, you've renamed those files to the correct file format. Then under assessments and assignments, you'll go to assignment 1 and submit both drawing files. So you should be submitting 2 drawing files. In terms of the actual instructions for the project itself, they are in the textbook. Let me go back to the textbook here. So down to page 23, the last 2 pages of the textbook chapter 2 and 3, if you're using the PDF. If you're using the textbook, the projects are the same for the past like 5 years. They haven't changed the dimensions or anything on you weird. So it should be the same general drawing structure here. So 3.1, you'll be opening simple1.dwg, draw the object shown in the figure above, start with the lower left corner, and at 0, 0, starting coordinate is mentioned there. So make sure, again, your drawing should be to spec. So all of these dimensions should be followed precisely. Use exact coordinates to locate the centers of the circles and the first corner of the rectangle. When it comes down to it, I don't really care that much if you use the rectangle tool or the line tool. As long as you end up with this drawing in the black lines, if you decide to use one tool or over the other or what have you, it's not a huge big deal to me. As long as you end up with a drawing, it's to spec and you follow the correct directions, there's no real problems. Again, there's a bunch of different ways you can use a lot of these tools. I don't have any particular concerns with you guys using different methods to do things. As long as the drawing is correct to spec, all these dimensions are correct. You start at the right center points for circles, you have the right coordinates for the rectangles, then I have no problems. I can't find a reason that I would dock you marks because you followed the instructions correctly, right? It mentions here at the bottom, highlighted in yellow, draw only the object, not the dimensions, as they're for reference only. So you have to follow the dimensions. So this line here should be 2 units. The diameter of this circle should be 1 unit. All those dimensions have to be followed, but you don't have to draw the dimensions onto the drawing. We haven't covered dimensions yet, so you don't have to draw the red text. You're just following those dimensions to make your shape. Finally, save and close the drawing, and then make sure you follow the correct file format, and you can go to submit 3.1. For 3.2, you'll be drawing 3 different shapes here. So in this project, you'll create several simple shapes using the line command as shown in the figure. Opening simple2.dwg from your practice file folders. It should be an empty drawing file. Again, even though it's an empty file, there may be some embedded settings that they want to keep for whatever project they're working on here. Maybe you're handing this drawing off to someone else and they want to have consistent and specific settings. There's all kinds of reasons that they might want to keep things consistent. So we'll play along and use whatever drawing file they want to specify. So with simple2.dwg, using the line command to draw the shapes shown in the figure, use the lower left corner of each shape as the starting point. So that's outlined in the instructions. Follow the instructions. Start with the lower left corner. So down here, or down here, or down here on each of these shapes. And then make your way around that shape clockwise. So around through all these lines here until you get back to your starting point, the bottom left corner. Use the close option for the last line segment. That's one kind of hint on making these drawings. You have to start in the bottom left and make your way around clockwise to finish this drawing for these 2 shapes here, because you do not have the dimension for the bottom lines. There's no dimension there, so you're going to have to use the close command. And in order to use the close command, it uses the most recent point and your very first point of that line command. So you have to start in the bottom left in order for that close command to work properly. You can select any point on the screen as a starting point. The exact coordinate location does not matter. So unlike 3.1, 3.1 specifically told you to start at 0, 0 for your origin. Whereas with 3.2, there's no specific coordinates on these drawings at all, so you can start wherever you like. That being said, to make my life easier, please don't put your drawings like thousands of units away, so I have to go scavenger hunting for them. But just keep it reasonable, of course. So exact starting coordinate doesn't matter. That means these don't even have to be in this order. If you want to put this shape on top, you want to do that one first, and then move this one down here, whatever. As long as you have those 3 shapes and their dimensions are correct, you're good to go. It mentions here as well, if you make a mistake on a segment, make sure to use your undo option to go back 1 segment. And then finally, when you're done, make sure to save your drawing with the correct file format and file naming convention. And then you can go to submit it under the assignments folder. Okay. I have a couple samples here as well. I quickly drafted up the projects just before class started here. So I have my drawings here. So you should end up with a product that looks like this. Again, I don't need to draw in the dimensions, but I do need to follow the dimensions to draw the object. So like it shows in the textbook here, this length from the top to the bottom of this object should be 8 units. If I go to my drawing, it is correctly, or should be, hopefully, to spec. So if I go from the top corner to the bottom corner, that's exactly 8 units. And I don't want to see any hanging decimals there either. So I'm following the dimensions, but I don't have to go through and actually write dimensions anywhere. This would be a completed drawing. And to double check that you've used the correct file, when you start a new drawing, I'm going to be able to tell if you used a new drawing versus the simple 1 and simple 2 drawings at a glance by checking your layouts. So if you have a layout 1, layout 2, that's from making a new drawing, that's incorrect. your drawing should have the layouts A-sized, B-sized, C-sized. So that's like a quick check to make sure you've used the right file. Okay. Any questions about assignment 1?
Brent, I have a question for the assignment, the figure 3.2. It
Yep.
doesn't matter like the origins, like we need to start from 0, 0 or like any point.
Nope. So for 3.2, there isn't any defined starting point, so you can start wherever you want on the drawing space.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, when you hand these in, there's no specific deadline, first of all. I generally won't be kind of setting a hard deadline for assignments that you have to submit it by. They're all due by the end of the semester. That being said, it's in your favor to submit them early, just so you aren't having scheduling problems towards the end of the semester when you have to study for finals and do AutoCAD projects, or anything like that that might kind of bog down your schedule. On top of that, if you submit early, I can give you your feedback early, and then you can make your changes, make your fixes, and then resubmit the file back to me, and I'll update your grade as well. So don't be too scared about if you have some bits of imprecision and stuff like that. Try your best to be as precise as possible and follow the directions as closely as possible. But if you do have some small trip ups, there's savings grace for resubmitting your assignment as well. Okay, any other questions? Okay, if you're all good, the last half hour or so here of class is just to work through assignment 1. So it's kind of a work period, a free work period again for working on assignment 1. If you feel like doing assignment 1 on your own time, you're by all means free to leave. Otherwise, I'm going to hang out here for the next half hour. If you have any questions about assignment 1, feel free to ask. But I'm not going to be covering any new content for the rest of the class period here. Okay. Yep. See you next week, Pierre.
Hey, Brent, I'm all done. I will see you next Tuesday.
Sure. Sounds good. See you then.
Have a good night.
You too. Yep. See you, Lawrence.
Hi, Brent. Just how do I rename the file from simple file 1 to assignment?
So when you go to save the file, when you use save as, you can change the
Oh,
file name when you do save as.
oh yeah. Okay, never.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. When do I grade the assignments? Generally speaking, give me maybe a week. Usually, it only takes me about a week max to do them. I usually spend the weekends grading most of the time. I have 3 classes this semester, so I can't guarantee I'll be doing it during the week, but generally maximum a week. Yep, no problem. Yep, see you guys. See you, Joseph and Roberto. See you next week. Yep, see you next week.
Brent, when we have to save as, it's at save as a drive and then change the name.
Yep, so I'll show you real quick. I'll share my screen here. So on AutoCAD, if I'm finished my drawing here,
Yeah.
when I go to save as, all I have to do is just change the file name here at the bottom.
Okay.
So type in my name, and then it adds the extension .dwg. You don't have to include the .dwg in the file name. It's an extension, so I'll add it automatically there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when you save, it should update the name of that drawing.
Okay. So we don't need to say DWG.
No, that's the file extension, so it's automatically tagged on the back of that file name.
Okay. And you can say save. Okay. Is it okay to submit the first one and see if I'm doing the right?
Yeah. Yeah, by all means.
Yeah. Thank you, Brent.
As long as you're comfortable with submitting, go for it. Yep.
So, Brent, if we submit the first one, we would be okay to do the second one later on, like to submit the second assignment?
You mean the 3.1 and 3.2?
Yes, like if I do the 3.1 and say submit.
Submit them both together. 3.1
Okay.
and 3.2. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
There's no immediate hard deadline, so don't worry about having to submit it right away or anything like that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Yep.
I already sent my assignment. Kindly check.
Yep, I can double check that it's in here.
I'm Hilario Asilo.
Let me see here. Yep, I got it here. I can see that it's submitted. I'll go through it likely this weekend, just to check for
Okay,
grading,
sir.
and then I'll send you your feedback. Yep.
Please do update me if there is an error on my assignment. Thank you.
Yep, will do.
Okay, thank you. I have to go.
Yep.
Have a
Sure,
good night.
sounds good. You too.
Brent, I have one more question. Sorry. Like the angle command when it works like when we go horizontal and vertical.
Yep.
No, sorry, vertical. Like the 90, if we bring the mouse down and say 90, it will come down and mark the line like 90 down, right? But when we go
Yep.
horizontally, it doesn't work that if we bring the cursor like towards the left and we say like 0, it doesn't count it that way. It's only counted like 180. Does it seems like the
Yeah. So the way AutoCAD works is here I have AutoCAD open. When you're doing these angles,
yeah.
So I make the line starting from the right, we have 0 degrees, and then upwards I got 90,
Yeah.
80. But when I go down to the 270, it's actually
Yeah.
taking the clockwise angle.
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
when we're doing this, pressing tab and entering these numbers, I can put in 270 manually, and it'll make a downwards line. But AutoCAD has like a little bit of a setting in it where it automatically starts counting clockwise if you're in this bottom right quadrant here. So by pressing tab and hitting 90, I should also get the same line here. May not put it on the same line. There we go. Should also get 90. So that little dotted line it's showing there, just beneath my line, is showing what line that angle is in reference to. So if I go and type in a full angle somewhere in the 360 degrees, it will follow that normally. But if I choose something between 0 and 90, it's going to use that reference line. So if I go down here and type 270, I'm going to get 270 up because it's using the reference line 0 across. So it went 90, 180, 270 vertical. So it's just when you're in this kind of bottom section, it changes the reference from counterclockwise to clockwise. So it's something you just have to be kind of conscientious of.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. I've uploaded the first assignment. Can you check if you have it?
Sure.
Mark Castro.
Yeah. Yep, I got it here, Mark.
All right. Well, you have a good night.
Yep, you too.
See you next week.
See you Tuesday.
Sir, I have a question on the units.
Yep.
This 3 is like a 3 inches or a 3 millimeter or what?
So by default with AutoCAD, it's technically in metric. So the 3 units, by default, it's not really specified if those are meters or centimeters or millimeters. But
Okay.
since you're working with regular numbers that are divisible by thousands, like 10, 100,000, you can kind of consider it as metric. And when we go to finish our drawing, we usually add in or include a scale in the drawing, telling that the reader of our blueprints that it's at a certain scale.
On my
Uh,
assignment, sir, on my assignment, I
Yep.
will do the scale of millimeter. Is it okay?
Yep. So these assignments don't have any particular units, so you don't have to change the units to anything. It
But
doesn't
I
say if it's
but
supposed to be in meters or anything. Yep.
okay. But I will follow the 3. I for the 3 I will use 3,000.
Uh, it would probably be better if you just use 3, but
But
if
I
it's
get
just
a very small line when I use 3.
yeah. Let me share my screen here. So if you're getting very small lines, if you use 3, so I'll
Yes.
start my line here and make it a
Yes.
length of 3. What might be
Yes.
happening is that you're too far zoomed out. If you're too far zoomed out, it's going to look very small. You need to use your scroll wheel to zoom in a bit more to see that line properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I will repeat my assignment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any final questions before the end of class here? If you do have any questions after class, feel free to email me. I'll respond within probably somewhere around like 24 to 48 hours ish. Okay, if there's no questions, I'm going to shut down the room for tonight.